So today we are going to take a look at different ways that we can take a simple random sample or an SRS. So the three techniques we're going to talk about are using a hat, using a random number table, and using a random number generator. And just for clarification purposes, remember the capital N is always going to refer to our population size and lowercase n is always going to refer to our sample size. So the first thing we want to do is take a look at using a hat. Alright, so what we're going to do here is not so much go through the process of drawing these samples, but what we're going to really focus on and teach and go through examples on is how to actually describe it, right? Because for the purposes of taking an AP test or a test in a class, this is generally what your teachers are going to be asking you to do. They're going to ask you to make sure you can clearly describe the rules to somebody else. So the first one we're going to take a look at is the hat technique. Right? This is the most simple, low-tech way of doing things. Basically, what we do is we write down, or we give every individual in your population a unique identifier, usually a number, right? And we write down all those numbers on the same size piece of paper because we want to make sure they're the same size, because if one paper is too big compared to another, then that bigger paper is going to be more likely to be selected. We put all of those identical sized pieces of paper in a hat, shuffle it all up, randomly select our sample size from the hat without replacement, and those numbers are going to represent the individuals that are going to be in our sample. Now, before we proceed and look at an example of this, I want to identify a couple of things because there are four key things that we are looking for regardless of the sampling process that we always need to make sure we talk about. Okay, so the first one is going to be this assignment part. We need to make sure that we have all of our individuals assigned a unique number. Next, we are going to have to always end up describing our random selection process. How are we going to draw those papers out of a hat? We also want to describe, are we doing this with or without replacement? Are we putting those names and numbers back into the hat or not? And finally, we need to kind of bring it back full circle and talk about the representation. What do those numbers that we drew out represent? Okay, so we always need to make sure we hit these four components regardless of the technique that we use. So here's our example. The management company of a local mall plans to survey a random sample of 3 stores to determine the hours they would like to stay open during the holiday season. So I've already counted up the stores that we have, 21 stores in total in the mall. We want to randomly select 3 of them. So when I describe that process, I need to make sure first I discuss what I already did, and that is assign each store a unique number from 1 to 21. Next, we want to write out all of these pieces, or all of these on pieces of paper. Third step is to put them in a hat. And now we get to actually draw them out. I want to make sure I use the words in some way here that I shuffled up the papers in the hat or that I've randomly selected them somehow. And I want to make sure I indicate the number of papers I'm going to draw out and that is equivalent to the sample size. So I randomly select 3 pieces of paper from the hat. And I want to make sure that I indicate that is being done without replacement. Final step is to state what these papers represent and that they represent the stores. So I will say these numbers drawn represent the stores in the sample. So that's using a hat. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at how to use a random number table. Okay, so with this example, we're actually going to just jump right in and do it with the random table because I feel it's best to just go through the steps rather than to read the steps with this to really kind of catch what we need to be specific about. So, first thing is, just like we said before, assign each individual in the population a unique number. So we've done that, 1 to 21. Then we'll take a look at the random number table. It really is just full of random digits, and I have them all separated out into separate lines. So we pick a starting point at random, and I'm going to say 121. This is where I want to start. So from here, I take a look at 7, 1, and 4, and I say, perfect, I've got stores 7, 1, and 4. We circle those, and we can see those are going to be the stores I've selected in my sample. That's Famous Footwear, that's Aeropostale, and that's Barnes & Noble. Fantastic. But there's a problem, okay? We notice now that the way that I was reading those, there was no way to get numbers 10 to 21. I was only looking at one-digit numbers at a time, but I have some two-digit numbers. So what we need to do is make sure that every unique identifier has the same number of digits and read those number of digits at the same time. So what we need to do is start to number each of these stores, all of them with two digits. So I can call 1 0 1. I can call 2 0 2, so on and so forth. And now that we have everybody having the same amount of digits, we can go ahead and read this with a little bit more equity. So I'll erase what I had before, and we will now start reading things two digits at a time. Starting in that same position, I had 71. So 71, that's not going to cut it. I don't have 71 stores. That number is useless to me. So anything outside of my range of population, I'm going to discard it. And then the next one, 48, I'm going to discard that one. The next one is 70. You can see that you have to skip across that gap there to get to that next number. And then the next one is 99. Also not in my range. So we're just going to keep going until we find ones that are. 84 is not, 29 is not, but then here we have 0, 7. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to write this down over to the side because the numbers on the random number table, it's very easy to get lost. Now, go ahead and continue through reading these lines and seeing which ones are going to be included in our sample. Okay, so I've gotten to the end of my line and I see that I got one more number, store number 10. The next one was 25. So here you don't pick a new random starting spot. You're going to go down just to the next line to continue kind of being unbiased. And there we see 13. Perfect. That is a store that's in our sample. And we have our three stores. So now we can go back and check out which stores they were. We have Famous Footwear, we have Gymboree, and we have Mrs. Fields Cookies. All right. Now, let's go ahead and kind of describe the process that we just went through. First thing, assign each store a unique number from 01 to 21. So you notice that I use those two digits. If our population happened to be 150, then we would choose numbers from 001 to 150. Next, we choose a random starting position on that random number table. Third step, we want to read two consecutive digits at a time. Okay, we want to be specific about how many digits we're going to read at a time, so that way we know which ones we're going to be representing. Now we have to describe, all right, well, which ones are we going to select from those two consecutive digits at a time that we read? So I'm going to state that I want to select numbers, unique numbers between 01 and 21. Okay? What that's going to do is that's going to save me from having to say I need to discard any repeated numbers because I use that word unique, and any numbers outside of the range because I've said I only want to select those numbers between 01 and 21. The next step that we want to write out is that we want to tell us when to stop. So stop selecting when you have three numbers, and then we need to say what these numbers represent, that the numbers selected represent the stores in the sample. Okay, and that's it. That's how we go through and describe in context how to use the random number table. So the last technique we're going to talk about is using technology or the random number generator. Save this one for last because it's actually generally the shortest and easiest one to describe. All right, so using a random number generator, really the shortest one we can write out. First things first, we always assign the individuals in the population a unique integer from 1 to n. So there's again our assignment piece. Then we want to describe our randomization process. So that's using the random number generator. Okay, and we also need to discuss the with or without replacement. That's where this word unique comes in. So obtain n unique integers from our range from 1 to n. And then we say, all right, the numbers selected are the individuals in the sample. Well, that's our representation piece, right? So the numbers selected are the individuals in the sample. And there's all we got to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at our last example. The same thing with the stores, and we've got it all numbered. So that was step number 1. We can start typing it out. Assign each store a unique integer from 1 to 21. And we say using a random number generator, obtain 3 unique integers from 1 to 21. So we've described our range. We described that this is going to be a random integer function and how many we are going to select. The unique part tells us to ignore and discard any repeated numbers. And then finally we have our representation piece. Done and done. These numbers represent the stores in the sample. Thanks you guys for watching. If you have any questions, please leave so in comments on Google Classroom or on the video. Have a wonderful day.